Town meeting day is Tuesday, and a lot of eyes are on school budgets across Vermont as property taxes are expected to increase and state leaders are working on solutions to ease the burden on taxpayers. We spoke with NBC5 State House reporter James Maloney about his coverage on this topic. Take a listen. James, thanks so much for being with us on NBC5 In Depth.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. It's great to be here.
Talk to me about where things stand on school budgets right now.
Well, Lauren, we're very close to town meeting day, and I don't have a final number on how many school budgets have been warned just yet, but we do know that at this point, this isn't the final figure, but education spend for town meeting day is sitting at around $2 billion right now. But again, that's not the final figure, but that's where things stand currently.
And how does that compare to school budgets that we've seen in the past? For example, last year?
Well, I know that in 2024, we saw dozens of school districts vote down school budgets. Now, in the context of now, we know that, we recently saw a report from the Agency of Education that said that student outcomes are declining for many Vermont schools. I wanted to bring up an interesting conversation I had with the South Burlington school board chair. He had said that for education consolidation to work for Vermont, it's not just about costs, it's also about the outcomes for students as well. That paired together adds more urgency to this issue. So we're just going to see how it all plays out on town meeting day.
What's the overall sentiment on education in the State House right now?
Well, I'd say that, the conversation and the ball is rolling among lawmakers right now. We know the governor's position on how he wants to see a consolidation plan by the end of this session. Right now, lawmakers are just talking about this, having conversations, coming up with ideas here and there, to move forward with. Now, when I say move forward, I mean continuing the conversation. There's nothing right now in terms of what is going to be pitched to the entire General Assembly to vote on. Right now, it's just the conversation.
Okay, and let's talk about the potential of school closures around the state. You recently reported on a school that almost shuttered. What's the status on that?
Well, you're talking specifically about the Washington Unified Union School District, where we saw a recent vote to close two schools, Calais Elementary and Doty Memorial. Now, community members decided not to vote those schools down. But looking at the perspective of the school board, they came up with a plan to have those two schools close if voters consented to do that, and then have those students, 150 students among both of those schools, go to nearby elementary schools, therefore having their own sort of sense and their own sort of plan of consolidation to help with costs as they're seeing that student decline. But in the end, as we heard, voters decided not to close those schools. There's something really sentimental about Vermont schools to communities. Community members really don't want to close their own schools. Just think of a grandparent. I went here, my kid went here, and my grandchildren are going to go here. They really love that legacy.
That's right. There is a lot of generational kind of tradition around schools when you talk about that. Property taxes are a big part of this discussion, so get us up to speed on where things stand right now. Right,
now we're heading into the finance portion of this conversation. I want to harken back to December, where we learned about the December 1st letter. The Vermont Department of Taxes came out with that December 1st letter and said that property taxes for this year are going to increase by about 12%. Since then, the governor has come up with a plan as to how to buy that down. First, it was about $75 million. Now, during his budget address, we learned that he wants to use $105 million to buy down property taxes using the Budget Adjustment Act as well as the big bill. But that would bring property taxes down to about 5.6%, catching up with lawmakers following that budget address. I remember Republican Senator Scott Beck had said now it's on the school districts to help further decrease that projected increase that we're expected to see.
And you had referenced the governor and what he hopes to see regarding education as we look ahead. Can you talk to us more about what Governor Scott hopes to see regarding this town meeting day and what's to come?
For sure. I mean, he's made this message very clear over and over again during his speeches, during press conferences. He wants Act 73 to be brought to fruition through school consolidation, and he wants it to be done his way, right? So we've seen through the school redistricting task force, a summer task force that was charged with creating these maps to consolidate Vermont school districts. They ultimately decided, not to move forward with a consolidation plan that would have all Vermont school districts on the same page. Instead, there's kind of this voluntary merger plan out there. That's something that other lawmakers agree with and like. Having schools come up with their own merger plans on their own. Of course, that's going to take a little bit more time, and that's a big problem that the governor has with that. That's why he really wants his consolidation, his idea of consolidation, one track mind, one lane for all school districts. And he wants that to happen this session.
And what school district redistricting maps are being proposed at the moment, and what are the biggest takeaways from them? I know that we've been looking at several so far. Catch us up to speed on that.
Well, Lauren, it's really important to note that there have been a lot of maps out there, especially when, Act 73 was coming to be. The governor had come up with his 5-district model. We've seen proposed maps, draft maps from the Agency of Education, but now lawmakers are talking about their own draft ideas, in committee. I'm talking both House Education and Senate Education. Now, it's really important to know right here, these ideas are just drafts. They're ways in which to start the conversation. And this is something that Governor Phil Scott has said that he's really pleased to see, that it's that the conversation is happening and that we're inching, towards something, which is great. But just to get into some of these plans, to bring up, Representative Peter Conlon's map. He chairs the House Education Committee. He's talked about a draft that would bring down Vermont school districts to about 2027, and then we also, have seen a mapping idea coming from Senate Education Chair Seth Bongartz, and basically that plan also includes partially, a voluntary merger plan for Vermont supervisory districts. I've done a bit of reporting on each of those maps. I can't get into all the details right now, but we're going to learn more about how these how these proposed ideas track throughout the session.
And where do we go from here? How do you see consolidation progressing?
Well, it's really hard to tell. As we just talked about, lawmakers are just having the initial conversations right now on consolidation, but, we're at a really pivotal time. Town meeting days coming up, crossover is coming up as well. But right now, there's still a good amount of time in the session to, get this done. We're following every step of the way on these conversations, what lawmakers are thinking, why they're against certain plans, why they're for certain plans. But right now, we're just gonna keep following it and see what happens.
Is there any kind of anticipation that you're seeing or hearing around the State House regarding education and our school budgets? Any anticipation that maybe we will see, overall passing budgets this year and this town meeting day? Is there anticipation or a plan for what could happen if that's not the case?
Well, I think it's important to bring up the idea that, the fact that the redistricting task force, this is a group of former superintendents and, lawmakers. That was a pretty small group. Now this is in the hands of the full General Assembly. So the question, still remains as to how consensus is going to be found on these maps, something that we're really just going to have to see in the near future. As for how budgets go, thinking of the perspective of parents, we want opportunities for students. We want opportunities for our kids. So, we have that piece, but at the same time, the fiscal responsibility of that is also being weighed as well. So we're just going to have to see how it all plays out this March.
Have you talked to lawmakers, James, about the approach that they're taking to this time around in this town meeting day? And what are the differences?
For sure I have. It's really about caution right now. There's a lot of conversations that are happening, a lot of testimony. Particularly, I want to bring up something that Representative Peter Collin had said when he was talking about his draft map. The map was informed by testimony from superintendents, from school board chairs, and of course lawmakers are hearing from their constituents in the community. And he said, with all that testimonial, with what they're hearing from Governor Phil Scott, he said that they might be pulled in so many different directions they might not even be able to do it. So that was just something that that struck me during that committee testimony.
Outside of the State House, I know you've talked to some voters in different towns, different communities. What's the sentiment that you've been gathering from them?
Well, again, I think people in communities really have a big sense of pride for what they have in their community, and they don't want to lose it, especially if that is a school district. But if that is a school rather. So I think, but on the other side of the coin, this is kind of people might be a little more nervous to talk about on camera is, that fiscal responsibility, is making that really tough financial decision to find ways to cut down on costs and the risks associated with that. But they do think that it is a track that is needed to take.
And this is also in the context of higher grocery prices and higher costs in general. So we will definitely be watching this. James, we really appreciate your coverage at the State House, and we look forward to our coverage on Town Meeting Day with you as well.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. Really
Thanks so
appreciate
much.
you.